I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling. Shouldn't be trusting me, I could be making it all up, you know. I control, you don't know. Babe, I'm a danger to myself. I control, you don't.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is that you are tuning in. This is Unapologetically Me, featuring me. No special guest, just me. You know, maybe one day I will have someone that's like, hey, let's do a collab. Like, some like really badass true crime YouTuber or something. And I'll be like, holy shit, dude, yeah. We can dream, can't we? We all start somewhere. All right, so, yeah, I don't know if you noticed my wonderful sign up there. It's freaking backwards. I'm well aware. Oh my God. Today has been one of those days where it's like the universe is telling me no. It's just like, no. Just don't do anything today, Miss Thing, because it's not going to happen for you today. So the fact that I'm even attempting to put this video out, it's going to be... Let's just hope it goes well. Okay, my battery was plugged in on the charger in my car while I was running a bunch of errands. It should have been fully charged when I got home to do this video. It is not. Can we say I need a camera? I know. But for now, we have to do it on the phone, and that's just the way it is. So, let's get started. First of all, if you are new here, welcome. I hope you like what I throw out there, and if not, then you won't hurt my feelings if you just scroll on through. Don't worry, you don't need to make a comment of anything that you don't like about me. You just go on your way. It's all good, okay? Today we're going to be talking about Chris Cornell, and we will be also getting into Chester Bennington, who is Chris Cornell's best friend. If you don't know who these people are, you're probably either really young, but you shouldn't be, because I don't think I have a lot of young ones here. I really am more 18 and up, but 18 is still young when you're 40. So, if you don't know who Chris Cornell is, you probably at least know who Chester Bennington is, right? Lead singer of Linkin Park. Chris Cornell is the lead singer of Audioslave, as well as a few Audioslave, Soundgarden, Temple of the Dog. But you would probably know him best for Soundgarden. Most people do know that band. So, anywho, let's get on in it. Now, I just want to say, right now, disclaimer, this content, there is a lot of triggering things that we will be talking about, and as far as taking one's life, if you know how these two died, it's more commonly known that they died from suicide. And that's what we are going to be talking about is, do I believe that that's the case? Because there's a lot of controversy surrounding this. But another thing that we will be talking about that goes kind of hand in hand is a lot of mental illness, mental health, mental illness, and addiction and substance abuse and issues with substance. So if those things are very triggering for you at this point in time in your life, then please, I would not suggest watching this, because I am going to get into it, and I'm also going to get very into my feelings about things, because I myself suffer from anxiety and depression and substance abuse. Yes. Full disclosure, everyone, I'm not perfect. I have a past, and it was pretty dark for a while. So I'm not going to share my whole life, obviously. This is about Chester Bennington and Chris Cornell, but where it fits, I will talk a little bit about my own issues as well, because, man, I'll tell you one thing, Linkin Park got me through some pretty shitty times, and I could very well relate to the lyrics that were in a lot of Chester Bennington's music. I sometimes almost feel like we are kindred spirits, to be honest. Chris Cornell, I did not know a lot about when I started this case. I do know who Soundgarden is, I actually had their one album that they put out with Black Hole Sun on it. Like, everybody knew that song. And everybody had that album, like, when I was growing up. I think I was in 7th grade when it came out, maybe 8th. And I remember it was summer, so it was probably between 7th and 8th grade summer. So, yeah, we're going to be talking about a lot of shit that, can get heavy. Okay, so if at any point in time you feel like triggered or anything like that, the last thing I want to do is to have anyone feeling like shit from watching one of my videos. But unfortunately, these two individuals had a lot of darkness in their lives, and a lot of mental health issues. They were battling a lot of demons. So just throwing that out there right away so that you guys know. Obviously, I will be reiterating that throughout the video. All right, so without further ado, let's go. Okay, so let's start with Chris. Now, my whole intro of Chris is, is his tragic death suspicious, or was the writing always on the wall? The wall. At least the wall looks right? Okay. Christopher Boyle. Yes, that was his name. Christopher Boyle was born on July 20th, 1964, in the grunge capital of Seattle, Washington, to Edward Boyle and Karen Cornell. Though it wouldn't be until the early 90s that grunge music would really reach its peak or even have its own name. He was raised Catholic and attended a Catholic school with his 2 brothers and 3 younger sisters. In 7th grade, the kids were pulled out of school after they were threatened with being expelled for being too inquisitive. Imagine that. I mean, shaking my damn head. Now, they went to Catholic school. They were being too inquisitive. They were probably asking questions about, like the Bible and things like that. And that school was just not having it. Like, they weren't wanting them to corrupt anyone else there who was actually, not questioning anything. So after the mom found out that they were going to be expelled, she was like, you know what, screw that, I'm just pulling them out. You ain't going to do that to my kids. We'll just go. During his teenage years, Chris spiraled into a severe depression. He dropped out of school and very rarely left his home. By the age of 13, Chris used alcohol and marijuana daily as a way to escape the anxiety and depression that he faced in his everyday life. After his parents' divorce, Christopher Boyle would adopt his mother's maiden name, and from there on out, he would be known as Chris Cornell. In the early 1980s, Chris joined a band titled The Shemps, which featured bassist Hiro Yamamoto and would perform throughout Seattle and surrounding areas. During his time as a drummer in The Shemps, Chris met guitarist Kim Thale, who would fill in for Hiro when he didn't feel like showing up. They performed a lot of cover songs of 70s bands at the time. Both Hiro and Kim would eventually help Chris to create Soundgarden when all 3 quit The Shemps in 1984. Now, I was 4 years old. This is a long time ago, man. In 1985, Soundgarden enlisted Scott Sundquist as the band's drummer, putting Chris on lead vocals, and this was where he always wanted to be. He would do lead vocals for the Shemps every once in a while, but his band title was a drummer. However, it seemed that whenever Chris would do vocals, they would get a lot of, from the audience. The audience just went crazy. He definitely had that voice, which we now can all recognize. Also, in 1985, Chris started dating Susan Silver, she would become his first wife, who would eventually go on to be a manager for Soundgarden, Screaming Trees, and Alice in Chains. In 1986, Scott Sundquist left the band, and Skinyard drummer Matt Cameron was enlisted as the band's new and permanent drummer. In 1987, Soundgarden will release their debut EP titled Screaming Life. And in 1988, they released another EP titled Fop. The band signed a record deal with SST Records to release their debut album, Ultra Mega OK, which would later go on to win a Grammy Award for Best Metal Performance. In 1989, Hiro Yamamoto left Soundgarden to pursue a degree in physical chemistry. You go. And was replaced by former Nirvana guitarist Jason Everman, who was subsequently fired after one tour. It's funny because when I read that, I was like, I never knew that a Nirvana guitarist played with them, and well, that's why. They did one tour with him and he was out. In 1990, Soundgarden enlisted Ben Shepherd as the band's new bassist. Now, I found this video of them performing in 1990 in Paris, France, so I thought I would just throw a snip in there. I can't do much as far as showing you guys videos that have their music playing at the same time because I'll get copyrighted, the video will never air. I'm hoping that it airs with all the things that we'll be talking about in it. We'll see. If not, you guys, I'm working on, actually I have a Patreon already. I'm working on figuring out how to upload to it and everything, because when we run into issues of YouTube flagging anything, I will be putting those videos there. Now, Patreon works in tiers, and we'll go into that later because I just totally interrupted what we were talking about, and I apologize. So let me get back to it and we'll talk about Patreon later. So in 1990, they were at the MTV Video Music Awards, and they were asked if they considered themselves heavy metal. And they responded, well, the Grammys do. They were up against Metallica, Queensryche, Faith No More, and they did have a little bit of a different sound, and I don't think they ever really considered themselves heavy metal. But this is where the grunge would kind of come into play later on. Seattle, Washington, the birthplace of grunge. It wasn't just a sound, it was a look and an attitude. And Soundgarden was one of the founders, along with bands such as Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains. March 16th of 1990, mother of Lovebone lead singer and roommate of Chris, Andrew Wood, suffered a serious heroin overdose. Wood was in critical condition, and his parents decided to pull the plug on his life support. Xana Lafuente, Andrew's fiance, refused to take him off life support until Chris was able to get to the hospital and say goodbye. And this hit him so hard. On March 19th of 1990, Andrew Wood died at the age of 24. Chris was devastated by Andrew's death. At the memorial service for Andrew Wood, Alice in Chains bassist Mike Starr walked up and offered a joint. He looked down to see Chris visibly upset and crying while looking at a photo album of Wood. Chris said in an interview that after the death of Andrew and subsequent death of Mother Lovebone, that the music they created was gone as well. So he went on to form a tribute band. And this was in Wood's memory, and he called the band Temple of the Dog. He enlisted Stone Gossard, Jeff Ament, Mike McCready, and Matt Cameron. In 1991, Soundgarden would finally gain notoriety as part of the Big Four of grunge music and released an album titled Bad Motorfinger. In 1994, the grunge rock era would come to a screeching halt after Nirvana vocalist Kurt Cobain's sudden and tragic death. Now, there's lots of controversy around Kurt Cobain's death as well. They even went after Courtney Love, who was his wife at the time and lead singer of Hole, a female grunge band. Chris Cornell on the Howard Stern Show mentioned that it was sort of a twist the way he did it, and what a shame it was for his daughter, Frances Bean, whom he fathered with Courtney. Frances Bean was just a tiny little thing at the time. And that's something that we'll learn later on about Chris. He did not believe in, if you have children, to take your own life was something Chris did not believe in. It was just something he felt it just was not fair to the children. So, again, for him to take his own life, having children, it was kind of not anything anyone was expecting. In 1994, Soundgarden released their new album titled Super Unknown, featuring songs such as Black Hole Sun and Spoon Man. That's the one I was talking about. And this was when I realized the band Soundgarden. This is when I heard that song. I remember we were watching MTV and Black Hole Sun comes on, and I had heard it on the radio because I listen to all sorts of stuff. So back at that time in Chicago, it was Q101. We had the Blaze, 103.5 The Blaze, and a lot of their music was played on those two channels. And when I saw the MTV with the lady, where she opens up her mouth, she is a son or whatever. She opens up her mouth like huge. I'm gonna try to find a picture of it to put it in here if you haven't ever seen it. It sticks in my head to this day. Her mouth got all big. And that video was like not what you were expecting if you were hearing that song on the radio and then you watched the video. It was like one of those where like the video was like such a mind fuck. It was very unique, and it was unlike one that I had ever seen before. This album debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, selling 310 copies in the first week. This is the album that boosted Soundgarden to the top of the rock scene. Chris was always very modest, humble, if you will. After this album hit number 1, Soundgarden was compared to Led Zeppelin and Van Halen. But Chris said in an interview, I wish that made me feel good, but I don't put much into other people's opinions, really. And he announced that they declined to play in Woodstock 94, saying, I can't think of a good reason to play it. Can you? I mean, this guy was very intelligent. And I think he did music for a reason. And the reason wasn't necessarily to be huge, publicity, and if he felt that, there was no purpose to do Woodstock, most bands would be like, what? Are you kidding me? You denied playing at Woodstock? But like, that's just who he was. He was very, very, like I said, modest and very humble and very down to earth. And like, he didn't see a reason to be compared sometimes to other bands. He just wanted to do his thing. So the band had mass success with Super Unknown and would mark their spot in history and become icons on the alternative rock scene. In 1996, Soundgarden released Down on the Upside, which was notably less heavy than the band's past albums. An argument started to begin between Chris and Kim during sessions over his desire to drift away from the band's heavy guitar sound that had become their trademark. Though highly rated, Down on the Upside, it ultimately failed to live up to the success of Super Unknown. And in 1997, Soundgarden formally announced that they had disbanded and they would be going their separate ways after 12 years. They called the split amicable and mutual. Really, Chris did want to go a little bit softer. Soundgarden wanted to remain that heavier guitar, heavier metal sound. And so they just kind of were like, you know what? Love you, but it's just, we're not blending anymore. We're not making, the magic happen anymore. So after the breakup and subsequent failure of his marriage to Susan Silver, Chris turned back to drugs and developed a serious addiction to OxyContin, and was also a very heavy drinker as well as dabbling in other substances. Chris said, when my personal life got out of hand, I just got loaded. So I went through a couple of years of depression again. I didn't eat. I drank a lot. I started taking pills, and at some point, you just get sick of it. I was pretty sure that nothing like that would ever happen to me. And then I ended up having as bad of a problem as anyone's going to have and still be alive. So I realized I'm not special. I'm just like everybody else. In 1998, Chris began working on his first solo project titled Euphoria Morning. It released on September 21st of 1999, and Chris went on his first solo tour. The album sold 393 copies. That's more than Super Unknown. In late 2000, Zach De La Rocha quit Rage Against the Machine, leaving the band without a vocalist. And eventually Chris Cornell was enlisted as the band's new lead vocalist. Now, I never knew this, and I grew up listening to Rage as well. In fact, I've seen them live a few times, or saw them live a few times, many, many moons ago. I had no idea Chris Cornell ever joined that band. But he was not there for very long, and that's probably why I didn't know. In May of 2001, the band began recording an album and finished 21 songs in 19 days. They were confirmed to play at Ozfest on March 19th of 2002, despite not having a name or a release date for their album. But before the band even had performed at a show, Chris left the band. In April 2002, Chris lost another friend, Lane Stanley of Alice in Chains, who, just like Andrew, died of a heroin overdose. Lane was the second of the Big Four's lead vocalists to pass away prematurely. So we had Kurt Cobain from Nirvana, and now we have Lane Stanley from Alice in Chains. The Big Four being, like I said, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, and Pearl Jam. In September of 2002, Audioslave was revealed to be the band's new name, and they released their first single together, Cochise. I say it like that, like Cochise. I didn't even know how to pronounce it, but I know how they say it, so whatever. November 19th, 2002, Audioslave released their self-titled album, which entered the Billboard 200, coming in at number 7 with 162,000 copies sold its first week. Not too bad for a comeback. Definitely not what it was, but not too bad for a comeback. This was Rage band members with Soundgarden's lead vocalist. And they say that it was very organically grown. Everything just collaborated well from their first jam session. They had no plan. It all just flowed. So, I wanted to make a point of that. I mean, we have Rage Against the Machine's band members with Soundgarden, with Chris Cornell as the vocalist. Very different sounds because, Rage, Zach De La Rocha had that voice, and that you associate with Rage, and that's probably why I never realized it, because I probably didn't even know that, it was Audioslave. In 2002, Chris decided to enter rehab, and he successfully got sober. Audioslave sounded a lot like Pearl Jam to me, just throwing that one out there. That's really the sound that they had. So Rage really mellowed down with Chris, and I think that it's nice because that's what Chris wanted. He wanted a band that supported him, kind of mellowing out just a little bit, not to be considered blah, but just a little bit mellowed down. Black Hole Sun remained a song that Chris performed throughout his years. Every show he put on that I have seen in researching this, he performed Black Hole Sun in it. It's a song that he just carried with him forever. In 2004, Chris married for the second time. He married Vicki Karianis, or Kariani. She's Greek, and I know in Greek it's pronounced Kariani. I'm not sure if she goes by that or Karianis, but there. Now we're just going to go bam, 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 bam down some things to kind of get us where I know you guys all want this to go. But I wanted to do a backstory on Chris Cornell. This is kind of a tribute to the both of them. So I really wanted, and this is what has taken me so long. I just wanted to get it right, So in 2007, Chris left Audioslave. 2009, Chris released a solo album titled Scream. 2010, Soundgarden reunited. In 2011, Chris released another solo album. 2012, Soundgarden released King Animal and would tour worldwide for the following years. 2013, Chris even performed at the White House in a small little show. In 2015, Chris released his final solo album, Higher Truth. In 2016, after tearing his shoulder, Chris relapsed on prescription drugs, though it was not really known at the time. He was very, very secretive about that. I don't think he considered it a relapse at first because it wasn't the same medication that he had issues with. but he definitely was very, very hush-hush about it for a very long time. Now, this is in 2016, okay, and we all know he passed in 2017, so this was the downfall here, if you look at it that way. So his wife, Vicki, in an interview, talked about a benzo that was prescribed for that shoulder injury that he had, and it was supposed to be able to help him sleep. According to her, he took 27 of them in a 3-day period, 33 in a 9-day period. So he relapsed. I mean, that's a relapse. If anyone knows about, addiction and recovering, a relapse is any time you take a controlled substance in an uncontrolled manner. So if you're supposed to take one every 3 hours and you're taking 2 or 3 every 3 hours, you have just relapsed. So, and it doesn't have to be on your drug of choice. So if he was addicted to the OXY and now he's, taking a prescribed benzo. Yes, it's prescribed, but he's not taking it as prescribed, and benzos are mind altering. It's considered a relapse. According to Vicki, he never should have been prescribed these medications. And if he absolutely had to be, obviously they couldn't prescribe him actual pain medication because he had an addiction, right? So the doctor was trying to work with him and give him something that would at least relax his muscles, relax him so that he could sleep. But being a recovering addict, it is such a slippery slope, and he should have been monitored on this medication, and he was not. In fact, he should never have been given that medication for longer than about a 3-week period, Vicki says. Now, he kept that a secret from everyone. And in 2016, he performed a solo tour. And I put a little note in here, fell on black days, because Chris seemed to fall on many a black day in his life. And he had fallen on the last of his black days after this relapse occurred. Chris had written songs for films, and shortly before his death, he was asked to write a song for the soundtrack to a movie called The Promise. His song on the soundtrack is of the same name. Chris's goal was to create a song that instilled a vision of hope. He said, "The hope was built into the story. To me, the challenge was being able to distill it in a couple verses and a chorus." In order to do this, Chris became engrossed in documentaries about the subject matters in the film, as well as books. This was not a light film, and while it does revolve around a love story, this film was about Armenian genocide that took place during World War I, and it's based on actual events. But think Titanic. The Titanic really did sink and people really did die, but Jack and Rose, on the other hand, are not a real couple. But unlike the Titanic, the Armenian genocide is a historical event that has been largely absent from Hollywood, as in some cases, history in general. In part due to the fact that modern-day Turkish officials still deny the genocide occurred. The U.S. has also yet to officially recognize the Armenian genocide. Chris became haunted by what he learned. The Armenians were killed by their own government, not the enemy, and they were killed in this systemic way that became the legal definition of the word genocide. He donated every penny that he made from that song, The Promise, to the International Rescue Committee, an organization that helps political refugees, and they're actually actively aiding Ukraine right now. So, I don't know, obviously I'm putting it up, the symbol and everything, if you guys wanted to check that out and donate to Ukraine right now. They are working on a lot of things. January 20th, 2017, Audioslave would reunite once more at Prophets of Rage's anti-inaugural ball, a show protesting Donald Trump's presidential inauguration. In March of 2017, Chris admitted to a friend that he had relapsed and wanted to talk. There's also kind of a maybe a little cryptic text message that Chris sent to his wife on May 14th. And he sent this text to Vicki at 12:37 a.m. He sent it in an iMessage. And if you have an iPhone, you know the difference between iMessage and text message, right? The iMessages show up in blue and the text messages show up in green. And usually if your text is all of a sudden showing up on another iPhone as green, either that means someone turned their phone off or you're not getting the right Wi-Fi or whatever. It's rare that it happens, but when it happens, it usually means something is going on. So I don't know if there's anything going on here, but his original message was an iMessage. It's in blue. It says, "Are you awake, boo?" with a question mark. I miss you. I hope you are sheepy. I miss when our babies were babies a little. And that kind of was like he's reminiscing, like he's in thought. He's in some type of deep spot in his mind. Also on May 14th at 8:01 a.m., he sends, this time it's a text message. So this time the message on her phone reads in green. "Happy Mother's Day, my beauty. I love you." Now, the night of Chris's death, May 17th of 2017, Soundgarden performs a show from the Fox Theater in Detroit, Michigan. Here's a little snippet. The show ended at about 11 p.m. This show was reported to be a bit interesting. As you may see in some of these little snip clips I'm showing, Chris seemed off and at times was behaving oddly.
Nobody tells me what to do. Nobody tells us what to do. Anyone can do whatever they want. I don't care what it is. Including you can fucking burn crosses on your lawn. I don't give a shit. You can burn your house down. Who cares? I don't. As long as it doesn't catch someone else's house on fire.
For instance, after the first two songs, Chris seemed to already be out of energy. Chris at one point even left the stage, leaving his bandmates to go on playing without him. He was also noted to have completely stopped singing at times, seeming to forget the lyrics. And when he was singing lyrics, a lot of the time throughout the show, he was completely out of sync with the music. He was also notably acting strange, rambling in between songs about odd shit like burning crosses in your yard or in your lawn, and anyone could do whatever they want, set your house on fire. He doesn't give a shit as long as it doesn't catch your neighbor's house on fire. Just kind of a little off the wall type of stuff. The Detroit Press wrote that Chris seemed to be just a shell of a man scrambling to do his job right. Ouch. After the show, Chris and his bodyguard, Martin Kirsten, were escorted by police to the MGM Grand Hotel. Chris and his bodyguard returned to his hotel room, where Martin reportedly gave Chris 2 Ativan, when Chris did have a prescription for it. Now, this is the medication that Vicki is talking about. His wife, Vicki, said in an interview that this med was prescribed to help Chris sleep after the injury to his shoulder, as I stated before. However, the script was for 1 tablet every 12 hours. Now, that's kind of an odd regimen, because you'd be taking it, if it's 1 tablet every 12 hours, would not be for sleep, in my opinion, because you'd be taking it, you'd be going to sleep, and then you'd be taking it again in the morning or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of an odd regimen, but that's what the prescription was for. Martin Kirsten said he was returned to his own hotel room he then returned to his own hotel room for the night, which was 2 doors down from Chris. At 11:30 p.m., Martin said that Chris called him for help with his smart TV. The bodyguard called the hotel front desk staff, who sent up a remote control that connected him to the hotel's network. Now, I've also read reports that it was a computer issue, but to me, the remote made more sense with Vicki saying that he was turning the home lights on and off. Like, he thought that the smart TV could be used with his phone. I don't know. At about the same time, 11:35 p.m., Chris was speaking to his wife on the phone. Vicki alleges she called him to ask why he was turning the lights in their family home on and off, which is something he could control by his cell phone. That Alexa thing. So he was doing that. So I don't know if he was trying to set his phone up to the smart TV to be able to control it from his phone. I don't know. He clearly was not in his right mind, because he's switching lights on at a home in another state, and he is while he's trying to work at a TV. So you could tell right there, and I think that alarmed her at first as well. According to his wife, Chris was slurring his speech, repeating words, and complaining about his crew having fucked up again. This prompted her to ask if he had taken any drugs. I was really angry, he says, and I took 2 Ativan. I'm really pissed, and I had to calm myself down. But Vicki challenged him on this, saying, it sounds like you took something else. After he started saying words that made absolutely no sense, he told her he was just tired, and he hung up on her. At 12:15 a.m., after getting no answer from Chris, agitated yet panicked, Vicki then called Kirsten and ordered the singer's bodyguard to run to his room and make sure that he was okay. Kirsten told Vicki that the door was latched from the inside. He then contacted hotel security to gain access to the room, but he was denied as he was not on the roof registry. Now, what the F? Okay, he's this man's security guard. He's the bodyguard. He's trying to get access to a room because he believes that the person he is responsible to protect is in some type of distress, and the hotel is telling him no. Now, and I'm sure he's saying this is an emergency, but they won't let him in. Now, he had a key card. That is something that we'll get into in a little bit when we talk about theories here. He had his own key card. That wasn't the problem. The problem was the door was latched from the inside, and therefore he could only open it so far. Vicki then advised Martin to break down the door, which he does. He then goes to open the bedroom door, which is also locked. He calls the hotel security again and asks for help. And when again denied, he recalls telling them, I'm going to damage this room. You need to send security, call 911, and call an ambulance. He then kicks the door in. Vicki is also calling 911 at the same time. He said he kicked the door 6 to 7 times before it finally opened. He went inside and saw the bathroom door partially open, and he was able to see Chris's feet. He then walked all the way inside and saw Chris laying on the floor unconscious with blood coming out of his mouth. He also saw that around Chris's neck was an exercise band. He said he loosened the band and began doing chest compressions. At 12:56 a.m., a hotel medic arrived, 40 minutes after Vicki called Martin Kirsten to go to Chris's room. That seems like quite a long time. The fact that the rooms were 2 rooms down and, it took 40 minutes for this to happen, that's where a lot of people started speculating. So, this is one of the first things that sparked issues among the public. Why so long? Another issue that people noted was that in the report, the hotel medic stated that he removed the band from Chris's neck, that he wasn't breathing, and he began to do chest compressions, when Martin Kirsten had said that he removed it. So, then I think it went back to him saying he loosened it. He didn't take it all the way off. He just loosened it enough and then began doing chest compressions. So miscommunication? I don't know. In any case, 911 is finally called by hotel staff, and the operator was told that a guest was attempting to hang himself. At 1 p.m., police arrive along with EMTs. They continue to try to revive him, and after over an hour of trying to save him, Chris Cornell is pronounced dead at 1:30 a.m. Vicki was called and told the news, and just minutes after finding out, she was already on the phone with insurance lawyer Kirk Pasick. He became the spokesperson for the family. Vicki did not believe that Chris had committed suicide. Neither did Kirk Pasick. They initially thought accidental OD, and they really wanted these tox screen results. Now, this brought up even more speculation. People were asking, why would an insurance lawyer be an appointed spokesperson in a death? Also, why would Vicki, within minutes, call an insurance lawyer? And I wondered the same thing. So what did I do? I went searching for it, because on the surface, that looks sus AF. It does. But this is what I found out. Now, you can choose to feel however you want to about this information. Kirk Pasick was actually a friend of Chris's, not just his lawyer. He met and had been working with Chris for over 10 years at the time of Chris's passing. And Kirk says that he had just talked to Chris a few days earlier about a project, and that the last time that they had lunch together in Beverly Hills turned into a 7-hour lunch. They just got to talking and just talked and talked and talked and talked. It was not even about business, just life. And he also mentioned that Chris had previously made comments about how he never understood how people with children could take themselves out. It was something Chris would never do. Kirk also talked about how people were speculating about there being a suicide exclusion in the life insurance policy, and that's why Vicki was pushing this narrative that Chris wouldn't have committed suicide. Not because of that, because there was an exclusion. If he had done this to himself, then she wouldn't get the payout. And most life insurance policies have this. She was saying he wouldn't have done this. It was the Ativan that made him do it. And a lot of people were thinking that she was only saying that because of this exclusion. However, Kirk admits that yes, there was in fact a suicide exclusion. It's very normal to have that in life insurance policies, but it's for something like 3 years after the policy inception, and he had these policies for a long time. Therefore, she would have gotten the payout anyway, is what he's saying. It didn't matter what it was. He was past the point that would have been an issue. So who knows? Like I said, people can say whatever they want in positions of power, and unless you have anything solid to back up that they're full of shit, then it is what it is. So 10 minutes later, more police are called in, including homicide detectives. So they did treat this case as a homicide from the start, according to these reports. Even though it looked like he did this to himself, they did treat it as a homicide. They took swabs and everything, samples from his bodyguard. They looked at security footage, all of that. They treated it as, which is what they are supposed to do. So, quick, Bob Saget. We don't have that with him. That is where the questions are coming from. Okay? It is very typical to consider things a crime scene first when it's suspicious or when the person is better. Anyway, we're going to go on. The medical examiner's office put out a statement that they had completed an autopsy on 52-year-old Chris Cornell, and that the cause of death was ruled suicide by hanging. After looking at surveillance footage, which showed no one entering or exiting the room after his bodyguard left him, they came to the conclusion that there was no foul play. They also say that there were no gaps in time, and all call logs are consistent with what was initially reported from both Vicki and Martin Kirsten. Now, June 2nd, 2017, the full postmortem was released, complete with toxicology report. So it did take a couple of months. Not really. It took a month. Well, this is the full postmortem. I want to say, well, this was 2 weeks later. There was another report that came out. Unless I'm getting them confused. You know what? Let me just follow my script. My script knows better than me because I was in sound mind when I was typing this up. And right now I'm just not having a good day. So let's just follow the script. June 2nd, 2017. The full postmortem was released, complete with toxicology report. Autopsy findings were consistent with a self-hanging, and the toxicology is as follows. So he was positive for caffeine and naloxone. He also had 5.4 mcgs of butalbital. He had 41 mgs of lorazepam. He had 170 mgs of pseudoephedrine. He had 10 mgs of norpseudoephedrine. And he had 0 pills in his stomach. And his urine was positive for barbiturates. So, break it down. Want me to? I'm just going to break it down. If you want, fast forward through. Caffeine. Yeah, most people have that in their system. However, caffeine is a lot of times taken in a pill form with the butalbital. Butalbital. Sorry if I'm not saying it right. Those usually go hand in hand, and a lot of time it's for like migraines and that type of thing. The naloxone is actually, it's weird that it's in the system like that. And at first I thought, well, maybe they gave him, you know, a naloxone shot for thinking that he OD'd on an opioid or something. The naloxone's sus to me in a way, but not really, because he is a recovering addict and he could have been taking naloxone, which would basically be something that you take long term, that if you were to relapse on an opioid, it would not be able to get you where you want to go. It wouldn't be able to get you, it would actually make you feel like shit. So that's what that's for. I'm not sure if he was prescribed that or if that was given at the time thinking maybe he OD'd or what. The pseudoephedrine and the norpseudoephedrine, I don't understand that. I didn't see anything. They do have photos of in the room, which I'm showing, and the prescriptions weren't for that. The lorazepam, now that would be the Ativan. But he didn't have any pills in his stomach, which is odd because supposedly, he admitted to Vicki that he had taken some. Martin admitted that he had given him some, yet there weren't any in his stomach. So they either dissolved very quickly or I don't know. But then again, this is a day later, so they could have just been dissolved. Lorazepam, the Ativan, they're very tiny little tablets. So now when this tox report came back, Kirk said that the ME's conclusion was in a sense to the effect of, well, he didn't die of a drug overdose. He died from the noose around his neck that caused asphyxiation. We have no evidence that anyone other than Chris put that exercise band around his neck. So we call that suicide. The argument that, if you're wondering why I'm saying those things like that, I've said them a lot during this and I don't want to get flagged. So I may just mouth a lot of the rest of it. The argument that Vicki has with this is the medications that he was on, he was abusing. And that Chris's doctor that prescribed him this medication was not prescribing it the way it should have been, knowing that Chris was a recovering addict. She is adamant that the Ativan that Chris was taking was causing him to become depressed and ultimately the cause of his death. There are a few other findings that people were talking about, so let's address those. Now, people had a lot of questions of the blood coming from his mouth, and I researched all of this stuff, okay? Like, not just from one source, from several. So what I found about that is that it does occur, it can occur quite often in hangings or strangulation deaths. You can bite your tongue. Very tight ligatures can cut, are very tight, around the neck, can cut off arterial flow, causing bursting blood vessels in the mouth, nose, and even sometimes the ears. Also, pulmonary embolism could be the case. However, I do have the full autopsy report, and I looked at that, and he did not have that. He did, however, have pulmonary hemorrhaging, which is another reason that sometimes in those types of deaths that there is blood coming from the mouth. So that is actually not uncommon. That is something that they see a lot in asphyxia demise. Now, the 9 broken ribs. All right. Now, this one had me like, okay, what? But now don't come for me. I'm reporting what I learned. This is on you guys to make your decision, what you think. So the blood coming from the mouth is definitely common to find in this type of death. The 9 broken ribs. Now, CPR was done. It was done for quite some time too by a couple of people, and the people that it was done by were not medical doctors. I mean, Martin Kirsten, I don't know if he knows CPR. Probably he does, but still, it's not like he's doing it all the time. Even paramedics have been known to cause severe rib damage when they are performing CPR, because it's usually in a very emergent type scenario and they are just going ham trying to get this person back to life, or at least keep their heart pumping. So CPR does in fact cause broken ribs, and typically in at least 30% of people, so 3 out of 10 people are going to have broken ribs from CPR. However, it has been further studied more extensively by some medical professionals, and it has actually been found that it's a much higher percentage. 77% of males and 85% of females will end up with rib fractures after receiving CPR. So it is very, 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 very common. In fact, there is a whole section on autopsy reports that says cardiopulmonary resuscitation, and then it has a checkbox. How many ribs were broken? Was the sternum broken? Was it like it's that typical that it is actually part of a form that is filled out. So other factors that can cause rib breakage or heighten the chance are the amount of time CPR is performed and by who. Now, I said they were going on him for an hour and a half, almost 2 hours, if you consider what Martin Kirsten was doing. And then we have the hotel medic, and then we have the paramedic. So there are 3 separate people doing chest compressions on Chris Cornell, and it has definitely been proven that for some reason, when it isn't a medical doctor, the rib breakage is even more likely. Also, age is a factor. The older you are, the more brittle your bones are, and the easier they are to crack. Now, again, I am not saying even what I think at this point. I'm just giving you the facts. So, Chris had CPR going for over an hour by a bodyguard, a medic, paramedics, all of which have higher incidence of rib breakage. CPR rib breakage is measured as follows. Mild rib breakage from CPR is about 1 to 6 ribs. So that would be a mild CPR break. So we're talking, you are probably going to get broken ribs if you have CPR done on you, and if it's done properly. Believe it or not, that is a sign that it is being done deep enough. They actually tell you may feel popping and cracking. It's not necessarily the ribs breaking, it is the cartilage snapping. But if you do feel that you're breaking ribs, don't stop. That's what I have read, and believe me, I know a lot about a lot of things after this case. Moderate rib breakage would be 7 to 12 ribs. That's moderate. And severe rib breakage would be 13 to 24 ribs. So basically, between 1 and 12 rib breaks isn't that rare if CPR is done for this amount of time by these amounts. So that's very interesting. Although I do tend to think it's more common that 1 through 6 ribs are breaking. But again, we have to look at how it was done in Chris Cornell's case. So breakage on both sides is common. However, it is the left side is a little bit more common for breakage. So basically, when those ribs are broken, they're kind of breaking on equal sides. Maybe 1 or 2 more on the left side than there would be on the right side. So there are a total of 12 pairs of ribs. So 24 ribs in all. Ribs 1 through 3 are the hardest to break. Ribs 4 through 10 are the easiest to break. 11 through 12 are difficult to break, and for him, ribs 3, 4, and 5 are the most common. Typically, fractures of the ribs during CPR do not and should not exceed 7 or 8. Now, he had 9. So, we have an issue there, possibly. It depends on how you want to look at it. Another theory, the Latch Theory. So this is that Martin Kirsten, his bodyguard, knowing that the door was not latched, said that it was, and kicked the door in anyway to avoid being questioned. That's a little out there. And then here, obviously, as you can see in these photos, that latch was busted off. So I don't know, like how, and it was busted off the way it would be busted off if it were closed and someone from the outside was trying to get in. So it appears to me that the latch was latched and that he did bust through that door. Now the ME was saying he was intrigued by the position of Chris's body, noting that it was partially suspended. Dr. Werner Spitz said he was not absolutely convinced that the suicide ruling is correct. But he said, in theory, it could be an accident. Not foul play, though. He did not say foul play. He said an accident. Now, what would be an accident about that? I don't want to get too into it because I don't want to be flagged. However, if you were asphyxiating, how could you accidentally do that? We can think of in some sort of way. Maybe. Maybe that's what he was getting at. I don't know. And there's also, okay, I don't know how to, I really wish I had a Patreon. I was doing Patreon right now, you guys. But anyway, he didn't say foul play. He said it could have been an accident. Just because of the way he was found. So I think he was found not fully, not, his feet weren't off the ground. So it's like, was it an accident? As in, like, he was attempting to do something while doing this. Erotic asphyxia, I think it's called. I don't know. That seems to be what he's talking about, because how else would it be an accident? He's not saying foul play. Also, head injury. People were saying that he had a head injury. There was no head injury in the autopsy report. Not at all. This theory actually came from a photo/video of Chris performing on stage the night of his last show, where it appeared that he had like a bald patch on the back of his head, as well as like a bump, and it looked like a lump. Like, it looked like he had a head wound right in the back of his head, and there was like no hair there. However, there was no head injury at all in this autopsy report. So that is really just coming from someone who noticed something and said something. Now, you have to understand, too, if he was performing with that had nothing to do with his death. You know, like that, if you saw it at the concert before this all happened, then that doesn't really have to do with his death. And that's where that head injury theory came from. Okay. The If Only charity. Now, this is another big theory. It was said that Chris Cornell, as well as his wife and best friend, Chester Bennington, were part of this charity and were about to expose some Washington bigwigs for their part in child trafficking. So, I looked into If Only, and it's in the UK. And while it is a charity for SAID children, I have found zero connection between either one of these guys and this charity. Chris and his wife did have their own foundation called the Chris and Vicki Cornell Foundation. Who'd have guessed? Easy name. And it was formed in late 2012, and it supports organizations that provide shelter and resources for homeless, abused, and at-risk youth, children living in refugee camps, and victims of human trafficking. So they do have their own foundation in this, and they support 3 main organizations. And these are listed on their foundation's website. They support Phoenix House, which is a substance abuse and dependence charity. They support the International Rescue Committee, which is the refugees, what I talked about with his involvement in The Promise. They also support Child Haven for abused and neglected children. So those are the 3 main organizations that they support and that they are connected to. I cannot find anything connecting them to this If Only charity at all. Nothing. Maybe that it's meant that way. I don't know, but I can't find it. And I don't just use Google, okay? I do use a lot of different ways to find information. Now, there have been lawsuits thrown around since his death that have brought some suspicion as well. Vicki sued Soundgarden for royalty rights, aka unreleased audio recordings that Chris made before his death. Basically, she wanted money for any of those recordings that he made before he passed that they made any money off of. Which I don't really look at as super sus. I mean, that's her husband's music. She's entitled to it as his wife. I'm not sure she needed to sue them. I don't know why she did. I don't know if she just maybe could have asked or said something or what was going on with that. I guess if you guys want to look more into that doesn't really seem too sus to me. Soundgarden countersued Vicki for mishandling charity money. Like fraudulent, and actually the countersuit was fraudulent inducement of the proceeds from a Chris Cornell charity show. So I guess they performed this charity show in Chris's honor, and she used this charity money for herself. Not, she did not donate it like she had originally said she was going to do. That, you know, it's shady. It's definitely shady, that's for sure. Now, the big one, okay? The code for Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book. It has also been said that they broke this code for Epstein's Black Book and that they were about to release a list of elite ring members, and that they were part of this global child abuse network. Now, I can obviously find zero evidence of this. And I'm not dumb, okay? Even if it is out there, I'm not equipped to find it. That I do know. If that at all were the case, I can't find anything, and I don't think anyone's meant to find anything. So I'm definitely not in any type of position to dig for that type of information. Some things I don't want to know. I have a family, okay? Sometimes ignorance is bliss, all right? We'll put it that way. And, I'm definitely not, I know my role. I know my boundaries. And that, I did look. Not going to lie, I did look. But I couldn't find anything. So, and that whole theory came from a website called yournewswire.com. And that is a site that has since been labeled as fake news by Watchdog PolitiFact. Now, Watchdog PolitiFact is an actual site that goes around and you type a name in there and it's going to tell you whether or not it's legit. And yournewswire.com, where all this crap came from, is not a legit site. It is a fake news site. So, we have that. The bodyguard theory. So, people have said many things about Martin Kirsten, who also happens to be Heidi Klum's ex-boyfriend. Now, they have said that he asked for a key card and that they wouldn't give him one. But the facts are, he had his own key card for Chris's room. And as I said earlier, it was the latch that he couldn't bypass. So there's a lot surrounding this. Oh, he asked for a key card and yada, yada, yada. No, he didn't need to ask for a key card. He had one. He's his bodyguard. He had a key card to the room. He couldn't get in because of the latch. So he was able to open that hotel door to a point and then kick it hard enough to bust that latch off, which there are these photos of. Okay, did I miss anything? Please let me know in the comments below. We're going to get into Chester after my opinion on Chris Cornell's death thus far, but we're going to wrap this all together. So there is going to be more. So the next video that I put out is going to have even more to add to this. And I'm going to just keep going with it, but it will be in 2 parts. So let me know in the comments below if I missed anything on as far as Chris goes, because we're now going to get into Chester and Chris together, but with Chris by himself. If there's anything I missed, you can go ahead and not just let me know, but let others know in the comment section below. Let's talk about my opinion real quick, and then we're going to go. So my opinion on Chris Cornell's death is basically what Vicki has said. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You guys probably don't want to hear that. You want me to say that I believe something more sinister was at play here. I don't think that there was. Based on all the evidence that I could get my hands on and all of the articles that I've read, videos I've watched, reports I've seen, I believe that Chris did, in fact, end his own life. Vicki had said something else that Chris was saying that night during her phone call. He was saying his ears were ringing, and he just wanted it to stop. It's not in a lot of the main articles, but I did find one article where Vicki goes into just how odd he was behaving that night. And one of the things he was just so angry about was this ringing in his ears that he just could not get to go away. And I think, I think he had been, ever since that shoulder injury and he got put on that medication, I think it wore on him. And I think he wasn't in his right mind anymore. I don't think that the Chris Cornell that everybody knew that was sober since 2002, I think that Chris Cornell went away after he was prescribed that medication. And I think he got to a point where he was so low again and he was almost nuts in his own mind. And I think that he almost just lost his mind for a minute or 10 or long enough to do what he did. I mean, Chris was doing well. He had been sober since 2002. He then has this injury and was not able to be prescribed adequate pain medication due to being a recovering addict. His doctor instead prescribes him Ativan to at least help him sleep through the pain and relax him. He should have only had this prescription for a short time, but he ended up having it for years. And because of that, he ended up abusing it. Vicki stated in a later interview that this doctor negligently prescribed Chris dangerous and mind-altering substances which clouded his judgment and caused him to engage in dangerous and impulsive behaviors he wasn't able to control, costing him his life. She filed a lawsuit against Dr. Robert Coughlin on November 1st, 2018. This was the doctor that prescribed him this Ativan. In this lawsuit, she alleged that Dr. Coughlin prescribed Ativan to Chris over a 20-month period without ever having seen Chris face to face. And the doctor, he of course denies this. He says Chris knew the risks associated with taking these meds. Well, of course he knew the risks, but dude, you're the doctor. And you knew he was a recovering addict because he told you that he was. It's the whole reason that you didn't prescribe other things for him. And you knew that he needed to be monitored while taking this. You just didn't care. I'm sorry. This doctor should be, put under, a microscope and looked into. Because what the hell was he thinking giving an addict benzos to begin with? It just doesn't even make freaking sense to me at all. They never should have been prescribed. And if they were prescribed, they are supposed to be monitored intensely. Now, the lawsuit was settled out of court in April of 2021. So just a year ago, this lawsuit was settled. Chris had once told his lawyer/friend, Kirk Passett, that he never understood people taking their lives when they had children. It was something that he would never do, which is why I feel that he obviously was not in his right mind. But, remember the film he made a song for, The Promise? Well, that research that he did for that movie really did get to him. It got in his head and he was unable to shake it. He started to, he helped out a whole charity afterward, and he never really let it go. It was something that he thought about a lot afterwards, and it wore on him. What happened to those people? And then combined with taking medication that is depressing you anyway, I don't know, you guys. So, and it was towards the end of that project that he started taking these meds. So he'd been acting strange on days leading up to his death. And even his last performance was a hot mess. You look at that video and obviously I would love to show you more, but I'll get copyrighted. But if you go and look at some of those videos, that's not Chris Cornell. That's just not him. And he was clearly under the influence. And then he goes back to his hotel room and takes more medication, hoping that it will slow him down a bit more. He said he was angry, but overuse of these medications can have a complete reverse effect, especially over a long-term period. He was taking a mix of things, as his toxicology report showed, and he mentioned that ringing in his ears. And I think the meds had been slowly working on his mental state over the last almost 2 years that he had been on them. And recently, he relapsed. These meds made him more and more depressed, and he snapped that night. Maybe. I don't know. That's my opinion. He just couldn't take it anymore. And I don't think it was planned. I think he snapped. It's horrible. It's horrible to think that, in just a blink of an eye, just a day, and she was on the phone with him, and she says that she told him, she was like, I understand you took, you're taking the medication, that's fine. She's like, I'm going to come out there, I'm going to fly out there tomorrow, I'm going to be with you, okay? Just calm down, just get some sleep, and I will be there tomorrow. And he hung up on her, and he went and did that. And That just wasn't something that Chris Cornell would do. And I think that's why all the speculation came about as to this couldn't have been at his own hand. This had to have been someone else. And then all it took was some, you know, these rumors to form about, you know, the Black Book and, you know, the work with kids and everything. Well, yes, he did do a lot of charity work for children that were being trafficked and things like that. But just because he was doing that didn't mean that he was going to expose this big, huge thing. And, you know, like I said, I can't find it. I wanted to spend more time looking. It's part of what's taken so long is that a lot of these things I can't find. And then I needed to look into Chester's whole thing, which is coming up next. So, I don't know, you guys. You tell me. I don't think he was necessarily planning it out. I don't think that it was... I think he had been very depressed, and I think he kind of got to a point where he just started tweaking out, and he did that. And I don't think in his right mind he ever would have. I think that Vicki is right to say that, you know, it kind of would be more of an accident, as in he wouldn't have done it if he wasn't prescribed that medication. That's what I think. I cannot find anything that would suggest that somebody did this to him. And I know that that is not what you guys probably wanted me to say. But again, I go off of facts and, you know, add my own opinion to it. And, you know, we can always put speculation in where it needs to be because, let's face it, sometimes we just don't know enough not to speculate. We need to look at different theories and whether or not they make sense. And when it comes to this, I looked at every theory that people have said and tried to make it make sense, and it doesn't. There's just not enough evidence to back it up. Now, whatever you think, based off of what I told you, or if you want to look more into it, I definitely gave you, you know, enough. I think that if you're interested in looking more into certain things, that by all means, go ahead. And if you want to, feel free to comment anything else that maybe I missed. I'm a human being, not a magical fairy. I always tell my kids I don't have a magic wand. It'd be nice if I did, but I don't. I just do the best that I can to perform whatever task it is that I'm doing. So, yeah. So let me know. I am going to probably continue recording tonight. I'm looking at my battery. But I'm going to put this video out. And then so be on the lookout for part 2. If you guys enjoyed this video and are anxious to see part 2, please make sure that you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you are notified every time I put a new video out. I do put at least one video out every single week. Other than that, have a great weekend, and I will see you guys later.